The morning sun was still shy, hiding behind soft clouds, when Sundar Pichai stood at the entrance of the big international tech conference in New Delhi. He took a deep breath, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement rush through his veins. Today was different. It wasn't just another talk about innovation or technology. Today, Prime Minister Modi ji himself was attending. Sundar knew the weight of that. The air seemed heavier, every step echoing with expectation. Sundar arrived early, as always. He loved the quiet moments before a big event. The way the empty chairs waited patiently, the soft hum of technicians setting up microphones, the smell of fresh coffee drifting from the hallway gave him a strange comfort. He pulled out his small notebook, flipping through pages filled with his handwritten notes. He believed in being prepared, no matter how many times he had spoken before. As he stood there, reading and muttering softly to himself, a group of young, sharply dressed executives entered. They laughed loudly, their voices cutting through the calm like sharp knives. One of them, a tall man with slick hair and a shiny watch, pointed at Sundar and burst into laughter. "Look at that guy," the tall man said, nudging his friend. "He looks like a school teacher waiting for his students." The others joined in, their laughter echoing off the walls. Sundar looked up, his eyes calm but heavy. He forced a polite smile and returned to his notes. Inside, though, a tiny sting pierced his heart. He had faced worse before, but somehow this moment felt different. Maybe because today was supposed to be about respect and unity, not mockery. The tall man stepped closer, scanning Sundar from head to toe. "Oh wait, aren't you that Google guy?" said, raising his eyebrows in mock surprise. Thought, "You'd be taller, or at least wear a designer suit." The group roared again. Sundar stood still, his hands gripping the edges of his notebook tightly. He didn't respond. His silence only fueled them more. He kept going, poking fun at his simple clothes, his soft-spoken nature, and his calm demeanor. He felt each word hit him like small stones. Deep down, Sundar remembered his mother's words. "When people try to break you, stand taller inside. Your silence will speak louder than their noise." He repeated that line in his mind like a silent prayer. Just then, a hush fell over the hallway. Footsteps echoed, firm and measured. Sundar turned slightly and saw a figure entering, surrounded by a small security team. It was Modi ji himself. His presence was like a quiet storm, strong, yet calm. Everyone's laughter stopped instantly, placed by nervous whispers and straightened postures. The tall man and his friends stood frozen, their smiles fading. Modi ji walked forward, his eyes scanning the group slowly. His gaze settled on Sundar, who bowed his head respectfully. Modi ji's face softened, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. He stepped closer to Sundar, ignoring the young executives completely. "Sundar," Modi ji said in his deep, thoughtful voice, "it is always good to see you. I heard you arrived early again." There was warmth and a touch of pride in his words. Sundar nodded, his voice almost a whisper. "Yes, sir. I wanted to make sure everything was ready." Modi ji placed a hand on Sundar's shoulder gently. "You always prepare well, and that is why so many look up to you, not just in India, but around the world." The young executives looked at each other, their faces pale, and their arrogance melting away like ice under the sun. They shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to leave or stay. Their earlier laughter now felt like a distant echo, shame wrapping around them tightly. As Modi ji continued to talk to Sundar, more people gathered around. Journalists, students, and other guests began to watch in silent curiosity. Sundar stood straight, a quiet strength shining in his eyes. For the first time that morning, he felt truly seen. One of the young executives tried to slip away quietly, but Modi ji's voice stopped him. "Young man," Modi ji called, his tone firm yet calm. Executive turned slowly, his face drained. "Of color." "Yes, sir," he stammered, his hands shaking slightly. Modi ji looked at him for a long moment. The silence was heavy, each second stretching like a thin wire. Finally, Modi ji spoke, his words soft but cutting. "Remember, respect is not shown by the clothes you wear or the titles you carry. It is shown by how you treat others. especially those who stand quietly with dignity. The room went so quiet that even the faint buzzing of a distant camera was loud. Sundar felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. He had never wanted someone else to fight his battles, but seeing Modi ji stand up like that touched him deeply. The young executive lowered his head. His earlier confidence shattered. His friends avoided eye contact, their faces burning with embarrassment. Sundar looked at them, not with anger, but with a quiet forgiveness that made them feel even smaller. Modi ji turned back to Sundar and smiled gently. "Shall we walk in together?" he asked. Sundar nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude. As they began to walk side by side, the crowd parted, watching in silent awe. Sundar felt each step lighter than the last, like he was floating above the ground, but deep inside he also felt a storm brewing. He knew that today was only the beginning. He could sense that this moment, as simple as it seemed, would change many things, not just for him, but for everyone watching. As they entered the conference hall, Sundar caught sight of the large stage. His name was written in bold letters across the big screen, and thousands of seats were filling up quickly. He knew that all eyes would be on him soon, not just to see a tech leader, but to see a man who stood for something deeper. Behind them, the young executives watched, frozen in place. Their laughter was gone, replaced by a heavy silence they would carry for a long time. Sundar felt a warmth spread through his chest. Modi ji's words echoed in his mind. "Respect is how you treat others." He promised himself to keep carrying that lesson forward, no matter how big the stage or how loud the world became. As they approached the stage, Modi ji leaned closer and whispered something into Sundar's ear. Sundar's eyes widened, a mix of surprise and curiosity flashing across his face. He looked at Modi ji, who only smiled mysteriously, and gave him a gentle nod. The lights dimmed. The audience settled, and the air felt electric with anticipation. Sundar stood at the edge of the stage, his mind racing with questions. What did Modi ji mean? What was going to happen next? He looked at the sea of faces waiting for him, his heart pounding like a distant drum. He took a deep breath, ready to step forward. But just as he was about to move, a sudden announcement crackled through the speakers, stopping him in his tracks. And that's when Sundar realized everything he thought he knew about this day was about to change forever. The sudden announcement crackled again, loud enough to make the entire hall pause. Even the last few people who were still settling into their seats stopped moving, their eyes fixed on the stage. A deep voice filled the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin today's keynote, there is a special segment requested personally by Prime Minister Modi ji." The words sent a ripple through the audience. Everyone turned their heads, whispering and guessing what could possibly be so important. That Modi ji himself had arranged it. Sundar stood at the edge of the stage, his feet almost glued to the ground. He glanced at Modi ji, searching for clues in his calm expression. Modi ji only gave a small nod and a warm smile, as if encouraging Sundar to wait and watch. The lights dimmed even further. A huge screen behind the stage flickered to life, and soft instrumental music started playing. The first image appeared, an old black and white photograph of a narrow street in Chennai, lined with small houses and bicycles leaning against walls. Then another image appeared, a young boy, thin, wearing an oversized shirt, sitting on the floor and reading a book under a flickering bulb. Nur's breath caught in his throat. It was him. The audience gasped softly. People leaned forward, eyes wide and unblinking. The screen shifted to a short video clip. It showed the same boy, now a teenager, walking to school barefoot, carrying a small bag. His face was serious, determined, almost painfully innocent. Next to him, other children teased and pointed at his torn clothes, but he just kept walking. Tears welled up in Sundar's eyes. He remembered those days clearly, the long walks, the endless teasing, the shame of wearing the same shirt for weeks. But he also remembered the gentle voice of his mother saying, "Keep walking, son. Your feet may be bare, but your dreams can touch the sky." As the video continued, the audience fell into complete silence. The screen showed him studying late at night while his parents slept, selling old newspapers for extra money, and helping his mother in the kitchen. Every scene felt like someone was gently peeling back layers of his soul for the world to see. The executives who had mocked him earlier now looked down at their shoes. Their faces were pale, their lips tight. They had laughed at a man who had climbed mountains they couldn't even imagine. The final image showed Sundar standing in front of a small house with his parents, a wide, hopeful smile on his face. The caption on the screen read, "From Chennai to the world, the journey of belief." When the lights turned back on, the entire hall erupted into applause. Some people stood up, clapping with tears in their eyes. Others held their hands over their hearts, moved beyond words. Sundar stood frozen, his throat tight, every heartbeat echoing like a drum inside his chest. Modi ji stepped forward and raised his hand. Slowly, the applause died down. The Prime Minister looked at the audience with deep, kind eyes. Then he turned to Sundar. "Many of you see Sundar as a global tech leader," Modi ji began, his voice warm yet strong. "But today I wanted you to see the boy behind the man. The boy who walked barefoot but never stopped dreaming. The boy who was laughed at but never stopped moving forward." The audience listened, completely captured by his words. Sundar felt his knees weaken slightly. He had spoken on stages all over the world, but he had never felt so vulnerable, so seen. Modi ji continued. "We often measure success in titles, in big houses, in luxury cars. But true success is measured in resilience, in kindness, in the quiet moments when no one is watching. Sundar has shown us that humility is stronger than pride, and that dreams can rise higher than the tallest buildings." A loud cheer rose from the audience again. Sundar looked out at the sea of faces, seeing young students, tech professionals, and elderly guests all looking at him with respect instead of curiosity or judgment. His chest swelled with an emotion he hadn't felt in a long time, pure, gentle pride. Modi ji turned to him and said, "Sundar, today you have not only made India proud but also taught us a lesson in humanity." He paused, then added softly, "Will you share a few words with us now?" Sundar swallowed hard, feeling his pulse race in his temples. He stepped forward slowly, the spotlight now focused only on him. He held the microphone with trembling fingers. Looking down for a second before lifting his gaze, he started speaking, his voice low but clear. "When I was a boy, I often felt invisible. My world was small. My dreams felt too big for my little shoulders. I was mocked for dreaming of things. No one around me understood." He paused, glancing at the front row where Modi ji watched him with soft eyes. Sundar took a deep breath and continued, "I didn't become who I am because I was the smartest or the strongest. I became who I am because I never stopped believing in kindness. I chose to forgive those who mocked me. I chose to help others, even when I had little myself, and I chose to keep going, even when I felt alone." The hall was so quiet now that the sound of someone shifting in their seat felt like thunder. Sundar's words wrapped around each listener like a warm blanket on a cold night. He looked toward the back, where he saw a young boy holding his mother's hand, eyes wide and shining. Sundar smiled gently and said, "If you feel small today, remember, being small does not mean you are weak. It means you have space to grow. And when you grow, let your heart grow even faster than your mind." A few people in the audience began to cry softly, wiping their cheeks with their sleeves. Sundar's voice cracked slightly, but he pushed forward. "I am not here to talk about algorithms or data today. I am here to tell you that success without respect is empty. Titles without kindness are hollow. If you can help someone rise, do it. If you can lift someone's spirit, do it. That is the real innovation our world needs." He finished, lowering the microphone slowly. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then, a single clap rang out. It was Modi ji. He stood up, clapping firmly. One by one, the rest of the audience rose, joining him. The applause grew into a powerful wave that washed over the hall. Sundar felt tears slip down his cheeks. He didn't wipe them away. He let them fall, feeling every drop like a gentle release of years of hidden pain and silent strength. The young executives who had mocked him earlier stayed seated, too ashamed to stand. They looked around, realizing the depth of the moment and their own shallow behavior. One of them tried to clap, but his hands hesitated, unable to find the courage to move. Modi Ji stepped forward again, placing an arm around Sundar's shoulders. He whispered something into his ear and Sundar nodded, his eyes still wet. Then Modi Ji addressed the audience once more. Today you have witnessed not just a speech, but a soul. A reminder that we must always look beyond what our eyes show. Us. He paused and looked directly at the young executives, his gaze sharp but compassionate. We should never measure a person's worth by their appearance or possessions. Humility and kindness are the true marks of a great human being. Audience nodded, many of them still wiping their tears. Sundar felt a deep warmth spread in his chest, as if his mother's soft hand was resting on his heart, noting him she was proud. Modi Ji raised Sundar's hand, holding it up high. The cameras flashed rapidly, capturing the moment that would soon spread across news channels and social media around the world. People would talk about it for weeks, maybe months, maybe even years. Not because it was a story of a tech genius, but because it was a story of a human heart that refused to be hardened by pain as they stood there. The energy in the room changed. It wasn't just a tech conference anymore. It had turned into a celebration of resilience and humanity. But just when Sundar thought the moment was coming to a peaceful close, he noticed a sudden movement at the side of the stage. A man dressed in a dark suit holding a thick folder stepped forward quickly. His face was tense, his eyes darting around nervously. Sundar felt his stomach tighten. Modi Ji noticed too, turning slightly, his expression shifting to serious curiosity. The man reached the edge of the stage and handed the folder to an assistant. The assistant ran forward and passed it directly to Modi Ji. The Prime Minister opened it slowly, scanning the first page. His brows furrowed deeply, his lips pressing into a thin line. A heavy silence fell over the crowd again. Sundar watched, anxiously feeling the air grow heavy, as if a sudden storm was about to break. Modi Ji looked up at Sundar, his eyes sharp but unreadable. He closed the folder carefully and held it close to his chest. Finally, he turned to the audience, his voice calm but carrying an unexpected edge. "There is something here that all of us need to know," he said. "Something that may change how we see today's events." Sundar felt the ground beneath him sway, his heart pounding like 1,000 drums. What was inside that folder? What could possibly be so important? The audience waited, frozen, as Modi Ji took a deep breath, ready to reveal a new secret that no one had expected. And in that single moment, Sundar realized that this day, which had already changed him forever, was about to take another turn he never could have imagined. The entire hall held its breath. Sundar could hear his own heartbeat pounding inside his ears. Modi Ji stood still, the thick folder held firmly against his chest. The assistant who had brought it was now standing at the edge of the stage, his head lowered, as if he already knew the storm he had unleashed. Slowly, Modi Ji looked out over the sea of faces. Every single person sat frozen, their eyes locked on him, waiting. Some people clutched the arms of their chairs, others covered their mouths, afraid of what might come next. Sundar felt sweat gather on his forehead. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other but couldn't move forward or backward. It was as if an invisible wall had grown around him, trapping him inside his own fears and memories. Modi Ji finally spoke, his voice steady but heavy. "Inside this folder are documents that reveal something important about the journey of Sundar Pichai. These papers were not meant to be shared today, but I believe in honesty and transparency, especially when the whole nation is watching." Hall grew even quieter. Sundar's mind started to race wildly. What could it be? Had someone dug up something from his past? An old mistake? A misunderstood decision? He tried to think, to remember anything that could be used against him, but all he could see were flashes of his childhood, his parents' sacrifices, the endless nights of studying, and the silent tears he had wiped away alone. Modi Ji opened the folder slowly. His fingers turned each page carefully, his eyes scanning every line. The tension spread like a thick fog across the room. Finally, he pulled out a single page and held it up. "This document," Modi Ji said, "is a letter. Written many years ago by Sundar Pichai to his mother. A letter he never intended for the world to see." Sundar's eyes widened. His chest tightened so much he thought he might stop breathing. That letter, he remembered it now. He'd written it when he first left India to study abroad. He had poured all his fears, doubts, and dreams into it. He had slipped it under his mother's pillow before he left, thinking she would read it alone. Modi Ji glanced at Sundar, silently asking for permission. Sundar, his hands trembling, nodded slowly. He had no words. Only tears threatened to spill. From his eyes, Modi Ji unfolded the letter and began to read aloud. His voice, usually strong and confident, softened with each word. "Amma," he read, "I am scared tonight. Tomorrow I leave for a land I do not know, among people I have never met. I do not know if I am strong enough. I do not know if I am smart enough. I only know that you have believed in me more than anyone else. When the world laughed at my dreams, you fed them like they were your own children." Modi Ji paused. Audience leaned even closer, as if trying to hear every single heartbeat between the words. "Amma. If I fail, I will return and help you in the kitchen, or sell vegetables with Appa. But if I succeed, I promise to never forget the floor I slept on. The meals you skipped so I could eat, and the kindness you taught me when I wanted to fight back at the boys who mocked me. I promise to make you proud, not with money, but with my heart." Modi Ji's voice cracked slightly as he read the final lines. Sundar felt hot tears slide down his face, each one carrying the weight of all those hidden nights and unspoken fears. When Modi Ji lowered the letter, the silence in the hall was so deep, it felt like the earth itself had paused. No one dared to breathe too loudly. Sundar finally stepped forward, his knees weak, but his heart somehow stronger than ever. He took the microphone in shaking hands, his head bent low for a moment. "That letter," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper, "was the most honest thing I ever wrote. I wrote it not to be strong, but because I was scared. I wrote it to remind myself of the roots I came from, the sacrifices my family made, and the promise I carried in my heart." He looked up slowly, his eyes red but shining with a rare light. "We all wear masks," he continued. "We wear suits, titles, and smiles that hide our true feelings. But behind every strong person is a story of fear, of failure, of moments when they almost gave up." Sundar glanced at the front row where Modi Ji stood watching him with deep, fatherly pride. "Today, you have seen my story, not the polished version on magazine covers, but the raw truth of a boy who dared to dream beyond his small street." The audience erupted. Not just clapping, but standing up, their hands above their heads, their cheers echoing against the walls, like waves crashing against a cliff. Some cried openly, some held each other's hands tightly. A few closed their eyes, silently thinking of their own hidden fears and broken nights. Even the young executives who had mocked him earlier were now on their feet. Clapping with trembling hands, their eyes wet with regret and awe, Sundar scanned the hall slowly, taking in every face, every tear, every silent thank you hidden behind trembling smiles. He knew in that moment he had touched something deeper than technology or innovation. He had touched their hearts. Just then, Modi Ji stepped forward and took the microphone. He placed a gentle hand on Sundar's shoulder again, his eyes glowing with warmth. "What we witnessed today is not just a story of success," Modi Ji said, his voice strong once more. "It is a story of a heart that refused to give up, a spirit that chose kindness over anger, and a mind that turned fear into power." He turned to Sundar. "And this is why we invited you here today, Sundar. Not just to speak, but to inspire. To remind us all that India's strength is not in its gold or its weapons, but in the hearts of its people." Another wave of applause thundered through the hall. Sundar felt a shiver run down his spine. Not from fear, but from the sheer force of love and respect washing over him. As the noise softened, Modi Ji leaned closer and whispered into Sundar's ear, "There is one more surprise for you today." Sundar looked at him, confused but curious. He could barely imagine what could be more powerful than this. Modi Ji signaled toward the side of the stage. A young woman stepped out from behind the curtains. Sundar's breath caught in his throat again. It was his mother. She walked slowly, wearing a simple sari, her hair tied back neatly. Her eyes searched the stage until they found him. The moment their eyes met, Sundar felt his heart burst open like 1,000 bright stars. He ran toward her, forgetting everything else. He fell to his knees in front of her and pressed his forehead against her hands. She placed her other hand on his head, her fingers trembling but firm. The audience watched, many now openly crying. Some people clasped their hands together as if in prayer. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the raw, unfiltered love between a mother and her son. Sundar looked up at her, his voice breaking. "Amma, I am sorry I made you worry all those years. I am sorry I couldn't be there to help you more." Mother bent down slightly, lifting his face with her gentle fingers. "My son," she said softly, "you have given me more than I ever dreamed. You kept your promise. You made me proud, not with your success, but with your kindness." He threw his arms around her, holding her as if he was a little boy again, afraid of the world outside their small home. She hugged him back tightly, rocking him gently as she had when he was a child. Modi Ji stepped back, letting them have their moment. The hall watched in reverent silence, as if they were witnessing something sacred, when they finally let go. Sundar helped his mother to the center of the stage. She stood beside him, her small frame seeming to glow with quiet strength. Modi Ji took her hand and raised it up just as he had done with Sundar earlier. "This," Modi Ji announced, "is the true backbone of India. It's the mothers who shape, our leaders who build our future with love and sacrifice." The applause returned, louder than ever before. It felt like the entire nation was standing inside that hall, clapping and cheering. Sundar stood there, his mother's hand in his, Modi Ji beside them. He felt something shift inside him, a peace he had searched for all his life, finally blooming like a flower after a long, harsh winter. But even as he stood in that powerful emotional moment, he noticed something strange. At the very back of the hall, a man in a dark suit was watching intently, a mysterious smile on his face. He seemed to be waiting for something. Sundar felt a small chill run down his spine. Who was he? Why was he there? And what did he want? As the cheers continued, Sundar realized that his journey was far from over. Another challenge was waiting in the shadows, ready to test him in ways he had never imagined. Sundar couldn't shake the feeling. Even though he was standing on stage, surrounded by love and respect, that one man in the back kept pulling at his mind like a dark thread. His mother was still holding his hand tightly, her fingers warm and strong. But Sundar's eyes drifted again and again toward the back where the man stood unmoving, watching every moment with a sharp, unreadable stare. Modi Ji noticed Sundar's shifting gaze. He leaned in and whispered, "Is everything okay?" Sundar nodded quickly, not wanting to ruin this precious moment. But inside, a storm was starting to build. The audience slowly settled back into their seats. Some people were still wiping tears, others were holding their friends' hands. The energy in the hall had turned into something sacred, a mix of gratitude, inspiration, and quiet reflection. But that one figure in the back felt like a shadow stretching over the bright light they had just shared. Modi Ji stepped forward again and raised his hand, signaling to the audience. "Today we have honored Sundar and his mother," he said, his voice strong and steady. "But now we invite Sundar to share his vision for the future, for India, for young people, and for the world." The audience erupted in supportive applause. Sundar took a deep breath, squeezing his mother's hand one last time before stepping up to the microphone. He looked out, trying to focus on the faces filled with hope and curiosity rather than that. One shadowy figure. "Thank you," Sundar began, his voice soft but clear. "Thank you for seeing me today, not just as a CEO, but as a son, a dreamer, and a human being." He paused for a moment, collecting his thoughts. He wanted every word to land deep in their hearts. "I believe that our future is not built in boardrooms or labs alone. It is built in small homes, in quiet libraries, in the hearts of young boys and girls who dare to believe in something bigger than themselves." He looked toward a group of students sitting in the front row, their eyes wide and full of wonder. "You are the future," he said directly to them. "Never let anyone tell you that your dreams are too big or your voice is too soft. Those who mock you today might one day clap for you. But even if they don't, keep walking." The hall was silent again, each word sinking in like seeds in deep soil. Sundar continued, his eyes growing warmer. Technology can connect us, but only humanity can heal us. Doesn't matter how advanced our machines become if our hearts don't grow kinder. We must build tools, but we must also build trust. We must reach for the stars, but we must also hold each other's hands. Some people began nodding. Others pressed their palms together as if in prayer. Sundar felt a new strength flow through him, the same strength he had carried from his childhood streets to the world stage. But then, in the middle of this emotional flow, he saw it again. The man in the back moved. He slipped out of the shadow and started walking toward the stage. Sundar's words faltered for a split second, but he quickly caught himself.
Modi ji
Turned his head slightly, his eyes narrowing as he noticed the movement too. The man was tall, wearing a perfectly tailored, dark suit, his hair slicked back. His face was pale but sharp, with eyes that seemed to slice through the air like knives. He held a small black folder in one hand, gripping it so tightly that his knuckles turned white as he got closer. Security guards began to move forward, but Modi ji raised his hand slightly, signaling them to wait. The whole audience turned, the energy shifting from warmth to tense curiosity. The man stepped up to the edge of the stage. Without asking permission, he climbed the stairs and stood a few feet from Sundar. He didn't smile. Instead, he looked at Sundar with cold, almost icy eyes. "Mr. Pichai," he said, his voice low but echoing across the silent hall. "You speak of kindness and dreams. But tell me, do you also speak of secrets?" A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Sundar felt the blood drain from his face. His mother stepped forward, trying to reach him, but Modi ji gently stopped her, whispering that Sundar needed to face this moment. Sundar swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" he asked. Trying to keep his voice steady, the man opened his black folder slowly, almost dramatically. He pulled out a thick stack of papers and held them up for all to see. "These are documents," the man declared, "that show certain hidden decisions made during your time at Google, decisions that affected thousands of workers and many small startup founders, choices that some say were necessary, but others call heartless." A loud murmur filled the hall. Some people turned to each other, their eyes wide with shock. Journalists in the back quickly stood up, pulling out their cameras and recording devices. Sundar felt his heart slam against his ribs. He knew what the man was talking about. There had been difficult choices, especially during economic downturns, and some projects had to be cut and employees laid off. Each decision had felt like a blade in his own heart, but he had believed they were needed to keep the company alive. Modi ji watched closely, his face unreadable, but his eyes sharp. The entire hall felt like it was holding its breath again, waiting. For soon, Dar's next move? The man took a step closer, thrusting the papers forward. "Are you ready to admit to the world," he demanded, "that you made decisions that hurt people? Are you ready to show that beneath your kind words there is also a leader who had to be ruthless?" Sundar stood still, his mind swirling. He could feel the eyes of thousands on him, and somewhere deep inside, the voice of his mother echoed, "When the world pushes you to your knees, stand up with your heart." He looked at the papers, then at the man. Slowly, he reached out and took the stack from him. He held it in his hands for a moment, feeling the weight of every name, every life affected by the decisions he had made. He turned to the microphone, his hands shaking slightly. "Yes," Sundar said, his voice trembling at first but growing stronger with each word. "Yes, I made those decisions. I will not hide from them." The man looked surprised. He had expected denial, anger, maybe even tears, but Sundar's honesty seemed to shake him. Sundar continued, "Every leader faces moments when they must choose between impossible options. I chose to save the company so it could keep helping millions of users and keep most employees safe. I cried every night after those meetings. I thought of every worker as family. And even today, their pain stays with me." Some people in the audience gasped. Others put their hands over their hearts. A few journalists lowered their cameras, realizing they were seeing not a scandal, but a confession of a human heart. "If my decisions hurt you," Sundar said, looking out at the audience, "I am sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I cannot change. The past, But I can learn from it and keep trying to be better every day." A long, heavy silence followed. The man stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, unsure what to say next. Modi ji stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Sundar's back. He took the microphone, his voice like thunder rolling across the hall. "This," he said, pointing at Sundar, "is what true leadership looks like. It is not about being perfect. It is about owning your choices, standing in the light even when it burns you." The audience rose again, this time slowly, like a giant wave lifting itself from the ocean. Their applause started soft, then grew louder and louder, until the hall felt like it might explode from the sound. Some people began chanting Sundar's name, others shouted words of support. The man in the suit lowered his head, defeated, stepped back slowly, slipping into the crowd and disappearing as if he had never been there. Sundar turned to Modi ji, his eyes filled with tears. Modi ji simply nodded and pulled him into a gentle embrace, like a father holding his son after a long battle. Sundar's mother stepped forward, wrapping her arms around both of them. It was a moment so pure, so full of forgiveness and love that even the cameras seemed to hesitate, as if they didn't want to disturb it. After a few moments, Modi ji stepped back, raising Sundar's hand once more. "Today," he declared, "we have not only heard a story of success, but witnessed the heart of a true son of India." The audience roared again, some people stamping their feet, others hugging each other. But in the middle of the joy, Sundar felt a new feeling rising. Inside him, it wasn't fear anymore. It was resolve. He realized that he could no longer just talk about kindness and dreams. He had to live them more boldly than ever before. As the noise of the crowd washed over him, she nodded at him softly, her eyes shining with pride. He understood her silent message. It is time to take your kindness beyond words. Go and build something that heals, not just something that grows. Sundar knew that his journey had taken another turn. A turn that would require him to leave comfort behind and step into the unknown again. And somewhere deep inside, he felt the flicker of a new idea, one that might change not just his life, but the lives of millions. As the cheers slowly faded, the hall settled into a heavy, breathless silence again. Sundar felt the echoes of every clap vibrating inside his chest, like distant thunder. He turned to look at his mother, who stood quietly by his side. Her eyes glowed with pride, but behind that pride was a silent question. What would he do next? Modi ji stepped closer, leaning in so only Sundar could hear. "You have shown them your heart," he said softly. "Now show them your vision." Sundar felt those words strike deep, like a seed falling into rich, waiting soil. Sundar stepped forward to the microphone again. He looked out at the thousands of eyes, the cameras pointed at him, the journalists scribbling frantically. But this time, he didn't see strangers. He saw brothers, sisters, dreamers, and believers. He felt a bond stronger than any applause. He took a slow breath. For a long time, Sundar began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I believed that my job was only to build products, to solve technical problems, to create tools that make life easier." He paused, glancing at the students sitting in the front row. They sat wide-eyed, some holding notebooks ready to write down every word. Sundar smiled gently and continued, "But today, I realize that my true work is not just to build things that change lives, but to build things that heal lives." He could feel the weight of those words hang in the air. Some people leaned forward. Others pressed their palms together as if praying for what would come next. After seeing the pain, after making difficult decisions, after hearing your voices, today, he said, his voice growing stronger, "I have decided to start a new journey." He stopped for a moment, the tension in the hall tightening like a rope. Even Modi ji leaned forward slightly, curious to hear what Sundar was about to reveal. "I am going to launch a new global initiative," Nandar announced, his eyes bright like stars reflected in water. "Initiative to help small dreamers, small businesses, and young innovators in every corner of India and beyond." The hall erupted in a sharp gasp. Some people covered their mouths, others clapped without even realizing it. "This initiative," Sundar continued, "will provide technology, resources, and mentorship to every young person with a dream but no support. We will build schools in remote villages, set up labs where children can create and experiment, and create scholarships for those who want to learn but cannot afford to. Tears spilled down the faces of many in the audience. The students in the front row started whispering to each other, their eyes shining with new hope. "I want every child," Sundar said, his voice breaking slightly, "to know that they are not alone. When they feel small, when they feel lost, they should know there is a hand reaching out for them." Modi ji closed his eyes, his face peaceful and moved. Sundar's mother pressed her hand to her chest, her lips trembling as she whispered a silent prayer of thanks. "This is not just my promise," Sundar said, his gaze sweeping across the hall slowly. "It is my life's new mission. I have built technology to help the world move faster. Now I want to help hearts heal deeper." A thunderous applause roared through the hall, stronger than any before. Some people stood on their chairs, others hugged each other and shouted Sundar's name. Cameras flashed like a sky full of lightning, but Sundar no longer noticed, felt as if he was standing in a warm river of love and purpose. But then something unexpected happened. A small, hesitant voice rose from the back of the hall. "Sir, may I speak?" Everyone turned, surprised. A young boy, no older than 12, stepped forward slowly. His shirt was slightly torn, his hair messy, and his hands held a small, crumpled notebook. The crowd parted to make way for him. His steps were shaky, but his eyes were bright, burning with something fierce yet innocent. Sundar bent forward slightly, his eyes soft. "Of course," he said. "Come here." The boy walked up the steps slowly, almost afraid his legs might give out. When he reached Sundar, he handed him the notebook with trembling hands. "This is my dream," the boy whispered. "I wrote it last night when I heard you would speak today. I don't know if it's good. I don't even know if I can do it, but I want to try." Sundar took the notebook gently, as if it was a delicate flower, flipped it open and saw drawings of machines, sketches of robots, and pages filled with ideas written in messy, crooked handwriting. Tears welled up in Sundar's eyes again. He closed the notebook carefully and looked at the boy. "What is your name?" Sundar asked, his voice full of warmth. The boy looked down shyly. "Arjun," he said softly. Sundar nodded. "Arjun," he said, "your dream is beautiful. And starting today, you are no longer alone." He turned to the audience, raising Arjun's notebook high. "This," he declared, "is why we must build together. Every big story starts from a small page like this." The audience burst into applause again, but this time it felt softer, more tender. People wiped tears from their cheeks and held each other close. Sundar knelt down and hugged Arjun gently. The boy's eyes widened, and then he clung to Sundar like he had found the anchor he had always searched for, as Sundar stood back up with Arjun by his side. Modi ji stepped forward. He placed his hand on Arjun's head, blessing him. "You grow to light the world," Modi ji said softly. The cameras captured that moment. Sundar, Arjun and Modi ji standing together on stage. A symbol of the future, of old and new hands holding each other, of hearts stronger than any machine. Sundar looked at his mother again. She was smiling through her tears, nodding slowly, as if to say, "This is it. This is why you were born." Even in that golden, glowing moment, Sundar felt something shift again. A sudden movement in the back caught his eye. He saw the same mysterious man from earlier, the one who had tried to expose him, standing there once more. This time, the man wasn't holding papers. Instead, he had a phone in his hand, and he was talking urgently to someone. His eyes darted toward the stage again and again, a look of frustration and urgency painting his face. Sundar felt a cold shiver run down his back. He knew that this wasn't over yet. For every dream, there would always be challenges waiting. In the shadows, he held Arjun's hand tighter, as if silently promising that no matter what storm came next, he wouldn't let go. Not of Arjun, not of his new mission, not of his heart. Modi ji seemed to sense Sundar's unease. He stepped closer and whispered, "Remember, the higher you rise, the stronger the winds." but the roots you have planted today will hold you firm. Nodded, feeling those words settle deep inside him like sacred seeds. He looked out at the audience, at the students, at his mother, at Arjun. He realized that he was no longer just Sundar Pichai, the tech leader. He had become a symbol of hope, a protector of dreams, a bridge between hearts and minds. And as he stood there, with all eyes on him, Sundar knew one thing for sure. The biggest test was still ahead. And it would ask him to be more human than he had ever been before. Sundar stood still, feeling Arjun's small hand in his own. The warmth of that little hand reminded him of his younger self, the boy who had once carried books heavier than his own body, who had run through narrow streets dreaming of the stars. Now, standing on this stage, surrounded by love and hope, Sundar felt as if he was holding his own past and future at the same time. But the shadow in the back of the hall kept growing. Sundar's eyes locked onto the mysterious man, who was now moving quickly, pushing through the crowd with urgency. Sundar felt a quiet storm brewing inside. His heart beat faster, not out of fear, but out of a rising readiness. He knew this moment would test everything he had spoken about: kindness, resilience, humility. The man finally reached the edge of the stage. He didn't wait for permission this time. He climbed up, his face tight with frustration and anger. In his hand, he held his phone, and on the screen was a live video. Sundar could see thousands of people watching, comments flowing fast like a waterfall. The man lifted the phone high and turned to the audience. "Everyone," he shouted, his voice shaking, "do not be fooled. This is all a show, not a pichai. The man you are clapping for is just another corporate puppet." He says he helps children and the poor, but he makes billions while people suffer. Gasps exploded across the hall. Sundar felt Arjun squeeze his hand tighter, terrified. His mother stepped forward, her eyes wide with fear, but Modi ji raised his hand. Signaling her to stay calm, the man turned the phone toward Soon. "Answer to the world, right now," he demanded. "How many lives did you change only to earn praise? How many families lost jobs because of your decisions? You preach kindness, but where was that kindness when you shut down people's dreams?" The room turned silent, as if all the air had been sucked out. Sundar felt the weight of every eye, every breath, every heartbeat waiting for him to fall. But he did not look away. Instead, Sundar let go of Arjun's hand gently and stepped forward. He looked straight into the camera, straight into the world. "You are right," Sundar said, his voice clear and strong, though it trembled with raw truth. "I have made decisions that hurt people. I have made choices that still haunt me at night. And yes, I have been called a puppet, a machine, a heartless leader." The man's eyes widened in surprise. He did not expect this. Sundar continued, stepping closer to the edge of the stage. "But listen to me carefully. Every time I chose to cut a project or shut a door, I carried the weight of each family on my shoulders. It broke me, but I never ran away from it. I faced every sleepless night, every tearful letter. I never claimed to be perfect." He took a deep breath, letting the silence wrap around him. "Today I stand here, not to hide or to act, but to tell you that kindness is not about never failing. It is about rising again and again, choosing to keep helping even when you are broken." Some people in the audience began to cry quietly, their heads bowed. Sundar looked at Arjun, who stared at him with wide, shining eyes. Sundar knew he had to keep going for Arjun, for every child who might one day stand where he stood now. "I am not here to erase my mistakes," Sundar said, his voice growing firmer, echoing off the walls. "I am here to turn my pain into purpose, my failures into lessons for others. If anyone wants to question me, come. I will answer every question, hold every hand, and carry every tear." The man with the phone seemed to shrink, his anger dissolving into confusion. His hand dropped slowly, the phone shaking slightly. The comments on his live video began to shift, some supporting him, others defending Sundar fiercely. Modi ji stepped forward then, his presence like a calm mountain in a storm. He looked at the man and spoke in a gentle but firm voice. "You came here today to expose Sundar, but what you revealed instead is his greatest strength, his honesty. India does not need leaders who hide behind walls. We need leaders who admit their scars and still stand tall. The man lowered his head, the fight draining from his body. Slowly, he stepped off the stage and disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind a wave of murmurs and sighs. Sundar turned back to the audience. He opened his arms wide as if inviting them into his heart. "I am here for you," he said softly. "Not above you, with you." The audience rose again, but this time there was no wild cheering. Instead, people stood in quiet respect, hands over their hearts, some closing their eyes as tears rolled down their cheeks. Sundar felt Arjun's hand find his again. He looked down at the boy who now stood taller, his shoulders back, his face full of hope and pride. Modi ji approached Sundar's mother and held her hand. He looked at her and said, "You did not just raise a son. You raised a light for this world." She nodded, her face wet with tears, whispering, "He has always been my light." Then Modi ji turned to Sundar, his eyes shining. "Your real journey begins today," he said. "You must go beyond speeches and beyond stages. You must enter every village, every small home, and give hands to those who have none." Sundar nodded, his heart beating like a drum, each beat echoing the faces he had seen and the dreams he had promised to protect. In that moment, Sundar made a silent vow. He would step down from his official titles and roles, and he would walk into the streets of India, into the classrooms, into the mud huts, to every place where a young dream was hiding, waiting to be touched by kindness. He would build centers for young innovators, provide tools and safe spaces for creators, offer mentorship not only for tech, but for life. He would show up where the world had forgotten to look. Sundar turned to Arjun and knelt down again. "You will help me, won't you?" he asked, smiling softly. Arjun's eyes lit up. He nodded hard, his small face bright with determination. "Yes, sir, I will help. We will help everyone." A ripple of laughter and soft claps spread across the hall. It felt as if a heavy darkness had finally lifted, and a new dawn was breaking right there inside the walls of that room. As Sundar stood up, he took his mother's hand in one hand and Arjun's in the other. He looked at the audience one last time that day. "Today is not my ending," he said quietly. "Today is our beginning." The lights in the hall seemed to glow brighter, as if the building itself was alive and breathing. Journalists dropped their pens, some even wiping tears before writing again. The students in the front row pressed their hands against their hearts, some whispering soft prayers. Modi ji stepped forward one final time. He raised Sundar's hand and spoke loudly so every corner of the hall could hear. "India does not just build technology," he declared. "India builds hearts that beat for the world." The audience exploded into cheers once more, but this time it wasn't just noise. It felt like a single giant heartbeat echoing into the future. As they stepped off the stage together, Sundar, his mother, Arjun, and Modi ji, they felt as if they were walking into a new chapter, one that was unwritten but already full of promise. Outside the hall, the sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and pink. Sundar paused for a moment, looking up, feeling the warmth on his face. He closed his eyes and saw all the young faces he would meet, all the broken hearts he would mend, all the dreams he would protect. He knew there would be more battles, more voices trying to break him. But he also knew that the love he carried, the love he had just shared with the world, would always be stronger. As he took his first step forward into the waiting night, Sundar felt lighter than ever before. He was no longer just the CEO of a tech giant. He was now a bridge of hope, a living promise, son of India whose true work had only just begun. And somewhere deep in the crowd, unnoticed, the man who had once tried to tear him down watched with a strange softness in his eyes. Even he, in that quiet moment, felt a small spark of change inside his heart. And so Sundar walked on toward a future no one could predict, guided not by fear or pride, but by the simple, unbreakable power of kindness.